And welcome to Catholics Coast to Coast. I'm Ace McKay, always glad to dive into more conversations happening in our Catholic faith when it comes to Podcast Central. Easy to find. Go to Podcast Central at EWTN.com/podcast, or once you find some of your favorites, you can subscribe wherever you like to stream your podcast. That way they come up and you don't miss future episodes. Before we dive into this week's show, let's definitely get a look at the weekend's Mass readings as we check in with your word on the Word.
The readings this Sunday remind me that we're not called to believe in a watered-down faith.
Yeah, we're not called to be decaffeinated Catholics.
Yeah, we need to be espresso, Catholics that stand up for the truth in a world that doesn't always understand what truth is. Today we are looking at the first reading. It's part of the servant songs in Isaiah.
It reminds me of Jesus' sufferings and what it takes to follow him.
Even though the crowd is trying to shame the suffering servant, he's showing his confidence in God.
He's surrounded, but he's not overwhelmed or disgraced. He stands firm and trusts in God.
Following Christ is not an easy calling. It's also not something you can pick and choose the parts you like.
Our challenge to you this week is the same call that Jesus gave us the conditions for discipleship: to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow him.
Even though it's difficult, that means accepting suffering without bitterness and not passing on any bitterness to those around us.
And we'll see you here next week.
Bye.
I love the clarity that we get each and every week as we dive into God's Word. If you want more of the Word on the Word, check us out, Podcast Central at EWTN.com/podcast. I'm Ace McKay. As Catholics Coast to Coast continues, we're going to dive to be in the midst of daring great things. It's a great podcast where this week, amazing facts about how we spend half of our waking life at work. Kind of depressing to think about that, but the relationships that we form in those work relationships are real, they're intense, they impact our overall vision for life. So let's see how we can glorify God in those relationships as we dare great things this week on Catholics Coast to Coast.
Dare great things for Christ. Christ calls us to dare great things. In the marketplace, as well as in the mission field, there has never been a time like the present for the spirit of the Catholic entrepreneur. Now is the time for men and women of great courage and great vision to engage our church and our culture. Now is the time to dare great things. And here is your host as we dare great things, Father Nathan Cromley, the president and founder of the St. John Institute.
It's an amazing fact that we spend nearly half of our waking life at work. The relationships we form there are real, intense, and impact our overall vision of life. For the Christian, this represents a real challenge. How can I live the relationships I have at work or in my social setting in a way that glorifies God and helps others to know Him better? In this first of our series on applying the gospel, we analyze the Catholic Church's insistence that whatever we do serves to make communities of persons. Hey everybody, and welcome to the St. John Leadership Network, where we are trying to show the impact of our faith in our real practical life, and also the importance of our practical wisdom for our faith. There's an intersection between heaven and earth, between spirituality and practicality, right? Between the gospel and the world that happens inside of your heart, the heart of you as a believer engaged in the world, and therefore in your actions. And if we allow our actions to be bereft of the influence that comes from God, well, the world will therefore be that much more bereft of the effects of grace and of God in it. And this is something that I really want to summon us to, right? If we really want to change our culture, then we need to make sure that our actions bring God effectively into our culture, right? And on the other hand, our spirituality is, by so many people, they just look at spirituality as something that lacks impact, that is somehow or other lackluster, right, in their life. Like, we don't have time to pray. We don't have time to spend time with God because practically we don't see the value in it. I mean, we might like it, it might feel good, but man, we got to make the next meal, and we've got to clean our house for our company. We have to celebrate our kids' birthday parties, and that takes precedence. Well, if that kind of thing goes on long enough, eventually we'll say, I don't even understand why I have spirituality at all. because my life is eminently practical. And I want to say that your practicality can actually help make spirituality real. In other words, if we take the wisdom of folks who are in action and need to be active because you are in this world as our starting point, and see our spirituality as something that can help us to fulfill our earthly mission, well, then we make our spirituality real, even as we make our real actions spiritual. And I'm fascinated by this because I think it's God's plan for changing the world. He wants to change the world by raising up saints to lead. All right. So to do this, though, we have to learn how to apply the gospel. And what I want to do with you now in this class, I want to take you through a series here, and it won't be that long of a series, but I want to look at the third part of the Catholic Church's document called The Vocation of the Catholic Business Leader. And even if you're not Catholic, I recommend this for everybody. There's nothing in here you're going to find objectionable if you don't share the Catholic faith. But what this does is summarizes the teachings of the Catholic Church around business, around work, around the productive enterprise, right? That takes up so much of our energy. And right away, I know some of you say, well, I'm not in business, I don't do work, instead I stay at home. And I say, that also is covered here. You just have to do it by extension. When I say business or company, etc., well, it's because on the one hand, I want to reach out to our business leaders who otherwise find themselves without any reference point, or priests actually trying to teach them about business ethics. So I want to say that, but I want you to be able to apply this at home. If you're a stay-at-home mom, for example, you are engaged in an enterprise that's also covered by these same principles, right? So you just need to apply it in your own way. In any case, when we're at work, the church has given us, historically, especially over the last 140 years, a really consistent and wonderful message. And what the Vatican did is around 2011 or so, they compiled it into a single document that really expresses things clearly. I want to look at the third part of this document in this series with you, right? If you're looking for the document, you can find it online. You just Google, Vocation of Catholic Business Leader PDF. It comes right up. And I want to focus in on paragraph 61, 62, 63 in that document. If you don't have it, don't worry. You don't need to have the document in front of you. But if you do have it, you can look it up. Because what happens in these paragraphs is the church enunciates, a consistent teaching that goes all the way back into the Bible. That no matter where we are and what we do as human beings, we have to maintain our humanity. And that means that if we are in the workspace, okay, and we're in a secularized work field where everybody's got different value systems, and some people are nice and some people are manipulative and some people are unfair, and everybody's out looking for the bottom dollar of their paycheck, we still need to approach that environment as from the perspective of a community of persons. Now, that's a complicated way of speaking. It's not very effective. It's not very direct. A community of persons sounds very theological. Well, that's because the Vatican is theological. It's priests who are writing this stuff, right? But what they're meaning is very precise. They're trying to say that even if you're in a productive activity that's focused on generating a profit, and even if your main goal is the bottom line, for whatever that is, you still have to treat people like people. Now, I know that could be a little bit generic. So the church really emphasizes this word persons. And what she's meaning by that is that the person that you're dealing with is not just a human being. It's a person is a human being who has the right to a spiritual fulfillment, meaning that they have a mind and intelligence. They have a heart and a free will. They have a dignity because they're made in the image and likeness of God, who himself is a person. Right? So not a human person, he's a divine person. And yet we're in his image because we are free, we are intelligent, we are able to know the truth and dedicate ourselves to it. We have a dignity that comes from an immortal soul and having that soul. And that has to be at the forefront of the decisions that we make. So this is important because the way that there's a tendency in America especially to kind of treat business as a cutthroat activity where we divorce what we do every day from the people who are doing it. And if I run a company, own a company, manage a company, outside of the perspective of a respect for the people as human persons, Well, before you know it, we're going to be transforming the world of work into something that actually renders our people less human, less fulfilled, less happy, and in the name of profit, for example. But doing so is contrary to our vocation as Christians who are running our businesses, who are managing our people. So there's a vocation here, you see, a call by God. If you have a position of power in a company or in a social group of different, if you're the chairman of your HOA, or the volunteer coordinator at your local YMCA, wherever you're involved in society, if you have a position of power, you need to make sure to wield your power towards other people in a way that will bring them closer together as people. And allow you to achieve your common work in a way that enhances their lives. Your workplaces, in other words, when they're run by Christians, all right, need to be workplaces where the people leave them more authentically human. I know that's a really kind of a fancy way of speaking, but I'll give you a practical example. If you go to an art museum, and I hope you all do, hope you have the occasions to go, you know that when you're in the art museum, there's just like a type of refreshment that happens to your mind. By the time you leave a museum, you're kind of full of a good, peaceful feeling. Or when you visit a church and you sit in the back of it and you look up at the stained glass windows and you can almost smell the lingering incense that's there, and you're touching something deeper in your person. You might not have anything to eat, you might not have anything to drink, but if you go to a symphony and you listen to a symphony or a ballet at least once a year, I'm talking about fine arts here, but I'm giving you examples where your spiritual life is awakened. By spiritual, I mean your mind and your heart. Well, our workplace needs to have a similar effect on us. Obviously, if you're in a manufacturing facility, we're not talking about the beauty of the fine arts. We are talking about a job that's well done, with a quality product of which we are proud, done in a way that's safe and collaborative with real relationships with others. That's our vocation. It's difficult to put into practice, but that's exactly what we're going to talk about here.
Are you a Catholic business owner or executive with your company? We have an invitation for you. August 11th through 15th, St. John Institute is hosting an Audeo Leadership Masterclass retreat in Evergreen, Colorado. At this one-of-a-kind leadership training, you'll learn how to bring the power of your faith to guide you on your challenges as a leader, deepen your spirituality, and meet other Catholic business leaders as interested in their faith as you are. With newfound wisdom, you'll craft the plans necessary to lead a daring life. Visit stjohninstitute.org/SJI-events to claim your spot. We'll see you in the Rockies.
So if I have a position of power, if I have a management position, or if I have a position of power because maybe I'm a specialist or I'm a technician in my field, if I'm a mechanic and I'm working on school buses, I had better know my brake systems and make sure that they're done correctly. Sometimes the technician has more power than the manager, because in the end, the manager can only manage your work, but the quality of your work, the attentiveness of what you're doing, if you're running a line in a manufacturing facility, right? Or if you're a dental hygienist and you're sitting there with someone's mouth open in front of you, it's the quality of what you do. It's going to come directly from the choices that you make. And in that power, the church is there to say, remember that anytime you deal with human beings, you're dealing with people who have a soul that comes from God. And therefore, they have a dignity to them that needs to be respected and enhanced by what they do. This is really interesting because it makes our companies real opportunities for us at a very basic level to heal a broken world, to heal societies. And I don't think this is something that we are overestimating here. When you create a team of people, be it 60 people manufacturing furniture, be it 100 people making food, be it 3 people that are fixing your cars in your garage, There's a team of people there. You're bringing them in from very different backgrounds, very different social settings, into a world where they're going to operate for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day together. So there's a set of base rules that you can put into place, and those base rules that you put into place can govern the quality of the interactions in a way that can help people to live at a higher level at work than they probably do at home. And I mean, you have that opportunity anyway. I'm not saying that you all do it, but like you can do it. And why don't we do it? I don't know. There can be all kinds of base rules that are interesting. Like there's, no cursing here. Or the type of music that we'll listen to is going to be this type of music that we're going to listen to while we're working. Or the way that we interact with each other will be respectful. That we're going to encourage one another, applaud accomplishments, recognize excellence. Well, these are things that they might not have at home. They might never have had growing up. I remember in one company where I was doing some leadership work, we had an affirmation time where they sat in their teams and they shared with each other why each one of them, is a good working partner, what they do well in their team to enhance the life of everyone else in the team. And you know what? I couldn't believe it. But there were people in that exercise who, became emotional because they said, we have never in our life received compliments or affirmation from anybody. And they're literally overcome by emotion because they're at the workplace is the only place where they've received affirmation. And you realize, well, what a wonderful opportunity. The owners of the business realize that they have an opportunity to give, really great human recognition to other people. And that by doing it, they're actually giving something that people never received in society. Those of us who come from good backgrounds, we take it for granted and we think, oh gosh, everybody's like this. Well, not everybody is like that. In fact, we have an opportunity, again, when we're working with other people, to bring them something that they may have been missing from their family, from their personal history, and to give it to them if we're looking for it. And so what the church is saying, in her document, in her teaching here, is that we need to look for it. All right? This is a quote from paragraph 61. We read that the purpose of business is not simply to make a profit, but it is to be found in its very existence as a community of persons who in various ways are endeavoring to satisfy their basic needs and who form a particular group at the service of the whole of society. So it's great because in that quote you hear, hey, this is just work. This is not a therapy session. This is not a church, which is true. It's not a family, right? Well, I understand that. But at the same time, the church is saying, look at it for what it is. It's still a type of community. It's people who are coming together with a mission. And what is that mission? The mission is to, number one, satisfy their basic needs. So, of course, make a paycheck, right? So we need to earn money. So we come together to help each other to earn money, right? So that's a very important point. It's not to be neglected, but it's there at the same time as a call for me. How do I help the others to also keep their jobs, to stay safe in what they do, to satisfy their basic needs through their work? But then the second thing that it emphasizes is that it's at the service of the whole of society, meaning we get to do something here in our company. That's really kind of amazing. We take aluminum, for example, that comes in from another company and we reshape it, we retool it, we repurpose it into something that is beautiful, that's safe, and that represents the pride that our own people have in their own community. I know one furniture manufacturer who will say, and whenever someone buys the furniture, he just says, thank you for putting our furniture in your home. It's a beautiful way of thinking about it, right? Well, if you're manufacturing furniture for a company like that, I mean, what a neat thought. People are choosing to put our furniture into their home to make it a part of their family legacy. Well, that's an incredibly beautiful thing. The conversations that'll be had around their table, the way that the furniture impacts the life of the home. And we get to do that. We get to fix cars. We get to clean teeth. We get to coach kids in how to swim. There's all kinds of ways that we make the world better. But what we need to remember is that we're doing it with other people. Even if you're a solopreneur, you still depend upon those who sell you the product or those who coach you in what you're doing. And you depend upon the stability of the marketplace. You depend upon your industry. There's all kinds of people who are involved. And all of them are depending on you to do it as a Christian. Meaning that we get to look upon, when I see the world as a community of persons, it means that I'm able to influence the world by bringing genuine vision for true humanity to them. And that's given to me through Christ and through my faith. So, but when I exercise it properly, so it looks like safety, it looks like encouragement, it looks like praise, it looks like development of their talents, it looks like respectful working environments, it looks like clarity in my objectives, it looks like patience with people who don't necessarily meet their objective. There's a lot of different aspects in a very secular kind of or non-faith world that are influenced by people who approach their job from the perspective of faith. And this is our call. The word company, for example, is the combination of two Latin words, cum, which means with, and panis, which means bread. Company means those with whom you break bread. Isn't that amazing? So I'm literally creating a community of people who are trying to do this together. And when I keep that in mind, it can become an instrument in the hands of God for great things. And in fact, that's what we're trying to do.
Would you like to start your Thursday mornings with a scriptural leadership lesson? Join the St. John Leadership Network, where Father Nathan hosts a 30-minute call at 6:30 a.m. in all 4 U.S. time zones. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
I know a lot of people are very concerned with our world, where they're concerned with our culture, they're concerned with the way that we envision a world, especially if we put God outside of it, because it seems like our moral compass is just lost. I mean, without a belief in God, is there any absolute that can really hold us together and be an effective goal towards which our society will strain? Because if you don't have God as your goal, well, then what's the goal except society itself? And if it doesn't have anything by which we define society, well, then that definition can change into ways that are dangerous and even harmful. And that can cause us a lot of concern. Well, I want to kind of summon you today to do something about it. Especially if you're a business owner or if you're an executive in your company, you have the right to lead that company in a way that does allow it to be permeated with values that come from God. But if you don't do it, well, then no one will. In the document that we're looking at right now, paragraph 62, it gives kind of two ways of looking at business. It says, when we consider a business organization as a community of persons, it becomes clear that the common bonds between us are not merely legal contracts or mutual self-interests, but commitments to real goods shared with others to serve the world. Great definition of a business. A commitment to real goods shared with others to serve the world. That's a really beautiful, transcendent vision that allows us to see and collaborate with people with the perspective of the community of persons, making a team of real people who can impact each other in a good way. And then the document juxtaposes a different position. Quote, "It is dangerous and misinformed simply to consider business as a collection of shares where self-interest, contracts, utility, and maximization of financial profit sum up its entire meaning. An inherent characteristic of work is that it first and foremost unites people. Therein lies its social power, the power to build a community." All right, so you can kind of see these two worldviews colliding, and many of you are right there in that collision point. How will we define our workspace? Well, you'll define the workspace based upon how you define the work being done and the way that it's being done. And if you don't define them, well, then someone else will. And this is where your role as an instrument of Jesus Christ becomes extremely effective. Just take, for example, let's take something outside of work. For those of you who aren't in business itself, if you want to take the example of you being in charge of some sort of social gathering or political movement or volunteering, let's suppose you are in charge of picking up the litter by the side of the road. All right, and you decided to volunteer with your family, and before you know it, you're in charge of that whole mile of road, and you're governing, 3 or 4 other families, and you're all doing it together. All right, well, suddenly you find yourself in a way where you get to set the culture for how you're going to interact. Well, set that culture well. Set it like a community of persons. You give the people the opportunity to get to know each other. Give each other the opportunity to build one another up. Recognize great service. Thank your people appropriately. Help people to maybe develop a sense of community that's larger than just picking up garbage next to the road for a mile. You see, like, there's an opportunity here where you can touch people in a way that allows God's love to come through you into their lives, without even necessarily mentioning your faith, but making sure that the way that those people are treated, insofar as they're there and as long as they're there, reflects their dignity as spiritual people. Now, I know that example is a very simple one, and when you're in a large multinational corporation, there's all kinds of challenges to make practices and policies to foster a community of persons amongst your workers, Yet, and I'm going to quote this from the document, leaders in large or small firms are greatly helped by the practice of personal virtue, those life-enhancing habits and qualities of character essential to any profession. Isn't that amazing? So the Vatican's like, yeah, it can be hard. You're in a company that's publicly traded, and so it does. All that matters is the bottom line. Well, you can say all that matters for the people in charge might be the bottom line, but not for me. Why? Because I'm going to live my life with virtue, meaning the way that I run my meetings, the way that I do my presentations, the way that I interact with the other people in my workforce won't be dominated solely by the coefficients of material success. Why? Because I am not, right? You see, there's a summons here to be a saint in a large multinational corporation, be a saint in a publicly traded company. Well, what does that look like, Father Nathan? Well, the document here is saying it looks like virtues. It looks like developing, especially prudence and justice. By prudence, you make the best practical decisions that you can. And by justice, you give each person what is their due, and you insist on that being respected. And from them, you can have a whole host of other virtues that comes through. Just think about the behavior of salespeople on their trips. I mean, from a lack of gluttony, just refraining from being gluttonous and over drinking, for example, or overindulging in other kinds of activities that aren't healthy. You bear witness. You bear witness to the fact that you're not there in order to just milk a company for personal pleasure. You're there in order to deliver a product because you've been sent there by God to do this service and to do it with dignity. I do want to finish by talking just briefly about family-owned businesses. And there's a special line that the Vatican actually puts in here for families that own their own business. And it's from paragraph 61. It says, "This is the ideal when relatives join together in a family business. And reflecting the love that wants every family member to flourish, family business leaders might tailor work opportunities to marginalized and disadvantaged groups." Now, that's not the easiest language to understand, but what it's driving at is, hey, just as you as a family say we're going to make our family the unit into which we're inviting you to work, and our family culture permeates that workspace environment, well, in the same way, we want to extend the family culture to other people who need this assistance. And I'm thinking of a real opportunity business owners have to employ those who have Down syndrome, to employ those who otherwise might not find a workspace environment, to give and render the dignity of work to people who might be marginalized in various ways. You can do that. Why? Because this is our family that comes first, and our family extends to our work. Therefore, our work can create a wider sense of family. It's just one particular imaginative, creative, proactive thing that flows from when you see your business for what it is, a community of persons that are united to produce something, yes, but who are people first, and then doing what they're doing. This opens our minds, and really we can do a lot of good then by our businesses, and our businesses can do a lot of good for the world.
Dare great things for Christ.
Share your feedback with Father Nathan. Send us an email at communications@stjohninstitute.org. That's communications@stjohninstitute.org. And visit www.stjohninstitute.org and sign up for our newsletter to receive updates from Father Nathan.
Applying the gospel to analyze the Catholic Church's insistence that whatever we do serves to make communities of persons. So find ways to better those relationships as we lean into Christ this week, and also more on Dare Great Things available at Podcast Central at EWTN.com/podcast, or subscribe wherever you like to stream. I'm Ace McKay. When Catholics Coast to Coast returns, we're going to check in with Catholic Review Radio, who's talking to Father John Deere, who has dedicated his life to promoting peace and nonviolence. He has founded an online project called the Beatitudes Center for the Nonviolent Jesus. So he's going to talk with Catholic Review Radio and ways that we can live in a nonviolent mindset with our everyday lives. So more coming up with Catholics Coast to Coast.
As a child, she longed to become a missionary, and in 1928, at the age of 18, she joined the Sisters of Loretto to learn English so she could become a missionary. In 1929, she was sent to India. 2 years later, she took her first vows and took her name after Saint Teresa of Lisieux. Teresa took her final vows in 1937 at the convent school in Calcutta, where she had become a teacher, and she was named headmistress in 1944. 2 years later, as she was traveling by train to a retreat, Mother Teresa heard what she described as a call within a call to go and serve the poor and live among them. In 1948, she began her work, replacing her habit with a white sari that had a blue border. In 1949, she was joined by other women, and they sustained their efforts by begging. In 1950, Mother Teresa was given permission by the Vatican to start the Missionaries of Charity, and 2 years later, she opened her first hospice house, the Calcutta Home for the Dying. All who came were given the chance to die with dignity according to their faith. In the 1960s, the missionaries expanded across India to Venezuela. In the 1970s, to Asia, Africa, and Europe. By the mid-1990s, by citizenship, Indian. By faith, the Catholic nun. As to my calling, I belong to the world. As to my heart, I belong entirely to Jesus. Saint Mother Teresa, please pray for us.
If it's central to the faith, you can find it on EWTN Podcast Central, featuring the best of EWTN Radio, as well as faith-filled podcasts from our friends and affiliates across the nation, all in one place, all free. The destination for great Catholic audio programming is EWTN Podcast Central. It's like podcast heaven. Visit EWTN.com/radio/podcasts today.
Welcome to Catholic Review Radio. I'm George Matisek. Father John Deere is an internationally known author, activist, and teacher of peace and nonviolence. He has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by Archbishop Desmond Tutu and former Maryland Senator Barbara Mikulski. He has traveled the world preaching a message of nonviolence and has worked with Mother Teresa of Calcutta, Daniel and Philip Berrigan, Coretta Scott King, and many others. Father Deere holds 2 master's degrees in theology from the Graduate Theological Union in California and has taught at Fordham University. A former Jesuit, he now serves as a priest of the Diocese of Monterey, California. 3 years ago, Father Deere founded the online project, the Beatitudes Center for the Nonviolent Jesus, which offers free podcasts, videos, and other resources on nonviolence. Father Deere is the author of more than 30 books, including his newest release, The Gospel of Peace, a commentary on Matthew, Mark, and Luke from the perspective of nonviolence. Father Deere was also recently in the Archdiocese of Baltimore, where he gave a retreat on following the nonviolent Jesus at the Bon Secours Spiritual Center in Marriottsville. So, Father John, thanks so much for being here on Catholic Review Radio.
Thanks for having me, George, and thank you for all the great, good work you do.
Oh, thank you. So you've dedicated so much of your life to the message of nonviolence and living the peace that's called for in the gospel. What inspired you on this path? What was the spark?
Well, I'll try. I had no intention of doing any of this. I'm from Maryland and went to Georgetown Prep out in Rockville. And Went to Duke University to get away from the church in the 70s. And long story short, one day I got knocked off the fraternity bar stool and decided I saw the light and I had to give my whole life to Jesus. And that meant, well, I guess I'll have to become a Jesuit. And my parents were not that pleased with that and asked me to wait a year or two. So I worked for a year. And before I entered the Jesuits up in Pennsylvania near Reading, I flew off to hitchhike in Israel for 3 months to see where Jesus lived. When I told my mother that, she thought, oh my God, it's worse than we realized. And the week I left, Israel invaded Lebanon. George, this was the summer war of 1982, and it was all orchestrated out of the Pentagon, and they killed 60,000 people in 3 months. So all the Holy Land tours were canceled. I went over on an empty airplane with just a Bible. In fact, I did hitchhike through Israel, and my goal was to go to the Sea of Galilee, and it was there while camping out and walking up and visiting the Chapel of the Beatitudes. It was a hot Wednesday afternoon. Now imagine the whole area is empty, and I'm standing in the Chapel of the Beatitudes for the first time in my life. I see the Beatitudes. They're written on the walls of the church. Blessed are the poor, blessed are the meek, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice, blessed are the peacemakers, blessed are those persecuted for working for justice. And I was overwhelmed. I thought, I was going to be a nice, pious priest. And I thought, oh my God, this is the job description. He actually wants us to live the Beatitudes, which I had never thought about in my whole life. And I walked out on the balcony looking out over the Sea of Galilee, and I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll live and work on the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount for the rest of my life. I'll try to be a peacemaker and love my enemies, but you got to give me a sign, which was very goofy, and I was a dopey kid. But all of a sudden, there were these loud explosions, and 3 massive Israeli jets fell from the sky, breaking the sound barrier, setting off sonic booms, and they swooped down over the Sea of Galilee, over my head, over the Chapel of Beatitudes, and dropped a whole bunch of bombs 15 miles away on the border of Lebanon. And I said to myself, right, I'll get with the program. And the next day I walked up to the border, which was very stupid, but I saw war. And I always think back on that moment, like for a split second, I opened my eyes thinking God might appear, but instead, what I saw was the reality of the world, which is brothers and sisters killing brothers and sisters all over the planet, even in the name of God, even in the name of Jesus, even at the place where he said, blessed are the peacemakers and love your enemies. I invite you to reflect on it with me, George, because it changed my life. And, when I say I opened my eyes, that had been going on for the whole time I was there. And who cares about war? The jets had been flying around, but I was oblivious because I'm following Jesus. No, you wasn't following Jesus. He wants us to stop the killing and to actually put active love, universal love, into practice. And he is serious about this. So I've spent my whole life, literally since that day in 1982, trying to live and teach and practice the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount, and the gospel, which I think comes down to a Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Dorothy Day teaching of nonviolence, being nonviolence. So that's what happened to me. By the way, it was a big setback for my parents and the Jesuits because I wasn't a pious priest, as you see. I've been out causing trouble ever since.
In your study of what Jesus has to say about nonviolence, what have you learned and what do you think people don't understand about his message? I mean, we typically hear about turning the other cheek, but it's sort of like background noise for a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't think we hear anything about it. I don't think we hear about turning the other cheek or the Beatitudes or anything these days. That's why I always say, and this gets me in trouble, don't read the Bible anymore. Just read the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, every day for the next 30 years and get back to me. because we've lost Jesus, and not to mention his teachings of nonviolence, or I call it universal love, universal compassion, universal peace. So I've been studying them every day my whole life now, over 40 years, and met all the great peacemakers. And that's why I wrote my new book. This is a big, massive commentary. It had to do, George, with the pandemic. It came, and I always felt called to do this. So what I did was it's a commentary, and you don't have them anymore. But I went through Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and I wrote about every sentence in the Gospels showing how Jesus is more nonviolent than Gandhi and Dr. King. Well, I'm learning tons, and it's my 5th or 6th book just on Jesus. So Gandhi said Jesus was the greatest person of nonviolence in the history of the world, which to me is shocking coming from the great Hindu. And I read that then when I got back from Israel, and 40 years ago. But then Gandhi goes on and says, and the only people who don't know that Jesus is nonviolent are Christians.
Hmm.
So I've been trying to explore, was Jesus violent or nonviolent? And I come to the conclusion with Gandhi that if Jesus is violent, forget him, because we're all experts on violence. If Gandhi and Martin Luther King are right, that he's the epitome of nonviolence, therefore we could unpack a theology and spirituality of nonviolence, now we're getting somewhere. Everything Jesus taught is total nonviolence. And everything he did is building a movement of nonviolence like Gandhi and King, teaching people how to live nonviolently, even then to the point of marching to Jerusalem like Gandhi and King, turning over tables and civil disobedience in the temple, doing it totally nonviolently. Well, you're going to be arrested and tortured and killed if you do that. And he goes to his death even more nonviolent. And by the way, his last words to the church in the Garden of Gethsemane, and I'll end on this, his last words to his friends around him who go to kill to try to defend him are, put down the sword. They never understood Jesus, just as we never understood him. And I think that's the first time they understood how deadly serious it is that we don't kill. We have nothing to do with war, killing anymore. And so they all run away from him. Eventually they come back and get with the program. And that's what I'm interested in helping us to all do.
Just a few weeks ago, we had an assassination attempt on a former president of the United States. We've had someone take a hammer to the husband of the former speaker. We have these incidents of mass shootings all the time. What is at the heart of that causes that kind of anger and violence?
Well, that's what I've been writing about for 40 years in my books and all my talks. For one thing, we're really sick as a country now. We're really addicted to violence. And we're so used to violence and death and brainwashed after thousands of years, not just us, but the whole human race, that war is normal, that violence in response to violence is the only way to end violence. And Jesus said, an eye for an eye only makes the whole world blind, as Gandhi translated. So therefore, offer no violent resistance to one who does evil. But actually, if you want to know what is at the heart of it, I think the church has failed to teach the nonviolence of Jesus since Constantine. The early church was a community of total nonviolence. You couldn't be part of the Roman Empire, the military, and it was an illegal movement. But then that changed, of course, in the year 300. So we've been having the just war and crusades, and now we bless the troops, and we all have guns, and we all go to church as if this is normal, following this totally nonviolent person. So therefore, I've explored this question, and in a nutshell, I'll answer it and say, it comes down to who are we, our fundamental identity. In this culture, you're told you're a good American, or you're a Republican or a Democrat, or you're a Russian, or you're Israeli or a Palestinian. We're all told these things, and we go right along with it. Jesus says, you're the sons and daughters of the God of peace. Therefore, you're a peacemaker. Love your enemies, then you're really sons and daughters of the God who lets the sun rise on the good and the bad. So our fundamental identity is to be children of a God of peace and universal love, a God of nonviolence. That's the scandal of the gospel, and that's the deep conversion we all need to undergo. Do we really believe in that God? And do we really want to claim our identity as sons and daughters of God? Friends, I'm saying that's the only game in town. It's the only thing worth pursuing. We need something more than this country and this world of violence. Let's follow Jesus and reclaim our identities. What do you think of that, George?
Pretty challenging.
I didn't make it up, George. It's right there in the Beatitudes.
Father Dear is the author of a newly released book, The Gospel of Peace, a commentary on Matthew, Mark, and Luke from the perspective of nonviolence. Father John, how do we apply these principles of nonviolence that we read about in the gospel in our everyday lives?
It's such a great question, George. So long ago, Gandhi takes this clumsy word from Hinduism and Jain's nonviolence. And what does it mean? But he and Martin Luther King talked about that every day of their lives. And they're basically just talking about love, the agape love of Jesus, which is universal love for every human being on the planet, seeing that every human being on the planet is your very sister or brother. So you can't hurt anyone, much less kill them or prepare to bomb them or nuke the planet. You know what I mean? Or let them people starve. So it's active love pursuing the truth of our common unity. Right? Reconciling with every human being, letting God disarm our hearts to be instruments of God's disarming love, and practicing every day from now on universal unconditional love toward every human being, finding God in every human being. And but it has a bottom line. There is no cause for which I will ever support the taking of a single human life. We don't kill. We don't kill people who kill. We don't kill people who kill to show that you shouldn't kill people who kill. We give our lives to stop the killing as Jesus did. And he died unarmed and nonviolent. And if you want to follow this guy, I'm just saying we all have to grow up and become like Gandhi and Dorothy Day and Dr. King. So the question then is, how do we do it? And that's what I've been struggling at, because we're like everybody. I'm a violent person, raised in a culture of violence, trying to become nonviolent like Jesus. Okay, so I got a little motto, George, and I wrote a whole book on it that people can get, or they can check it out on my website, which is johndeere.org. The book is called The Nonviolent Life. And I was asked this question so many times. Here's my answer, that this trying to live ordinary daily nonviolence requires three simultaneous things, okay? Mm-hmm. It's easy to remember. Number one, to be totally nonviolent to yourself from now on. Well, how do you do that? Because we all beat ourselves up and we're mean and violent to ourselves. And I'm saying non-cooperate with your own inner violence. Don't beat yourself up. Make peace with yourself. Let go of any roots of violence inside you. That's why we need God. We turn to prayer. We surrender our violence and our anger and our hurts and our wounds and bitterness and resentment. Surrender it all to God. Let God give you the gift of peace, and begin the process of an inner disarmament and making peace with yourself and peace with God. And by the way, it's a lot more fun living a more peaceful life and not beating yourself up. Okay, secondly, while you're working on inner nonviolence, number two, you practice meticulous nonviolence toward every human being on the planet and all the creatures and Mother Earth. How's that going for you, George? So you laugh and you go, well, that's crazy. No, that's the spiritual life. Now, so you can go, well, I'm a nice person. I'm generally nonviolent. Okay. Who are the people who push your buttons? Who's the one or two or three most difficult person in your life? And I think the gospel says that most difficult person is your guru. It's your spiritual guide, because they're showing you how violent you are and you want to follow Jesus. So you get to practice being nonviolent to them, whether it's a parent or child, a neighbor, or your boss, or the president, or a priest, somebody. Whoever it is who pushes your buttons, you get to go and practice. How do I get to figure out, I'm not going to respond when a harsh thing is said to me, but I'm not going to be passive. See, the gospel says in the face of violence, the world has taught us we can run away and do nothing, or we can fight back with violence. And Jesus says there's a third way where you don't run away, but you engage your opponent with love. and you allow God to disarm both your hearts. That's what we're talking about. Okay, while you're working on interpersonal nonviolence and learning to be more nonviolent to the creatures in Mother Earth, finally, number 3, you also have to have one foot in the global grassroots movement of nonviolence movements, working for justice, creation, the poor, and for peace. Oscar Romero said, nobody can do everything, but everybody's got to do something. And that the only way the world change happens in world history, from Jesus to Gandhi to Martin Luther King to all the movements today, is bottom-up, grassroots, people power movements. That's how change happens. It never happens top-down. And Jesus started a movement. Look at Luke 10. He sends the 72 ahead of him. And that's just like Gandhi and Dr. King. That's what I'm getting at. That's why I've been involved in the anti-war and anti-nuclear movement. I just say, if you're not involved, pick a cause that's close to your heart and tithe some of your time. Otherwise, we're just sitting back and working on ourselves, and that's not the gospel. We all have to get involved in the world. And maybe that means going to meetings with your local environmental group, working to end housing, homelessness, or racism in Baltimore or D.C., working to end global poverty. There's tons of good groups, getting with Pax Christi, the official Catholic peace movement, and so forth and so on. There's so many good groups. Pick one, get involved, and then you're part of the global movement. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't know if that helps. I could talk also about daily prayer and contemplation and needing to make friends in the movement. And but everything at the Mass and the sacraments is to send us forth to live nonviolently like Jesus and to do our part to welcome God's reign of peace and nonviolence.
One of the things that the Archdiocese of Baltimore is doing this summer is sponsoring a gun buyback for the city. And it's the second year in a row that they've done that. And actually, I think it's probably going to be double in size of what it was last year. What kind of impact do those kinds of activities have in reducing violence?
Huge. I'm about to give a keynote speech at a national church faith-based anti-gun violence conference in a couple of weeks. And I've been thinking about that. You know, there are more guns than people in the United States. What's the statistic? 30,000 people killed by guns in the United States. We're all obsessed thinking that that's our constitutional right and all. Well, I'm just saying, what does the nonviolent Jesus want us to do? And guns don't work, and they're too dangerous to have in a house full of kids. And meanwhile, you have to go through all this stuff to get a driver's license or to put a foundation. You should have to get through something to buy an AK-47 or a Glock 19. You can't just walk down the street, as you can in many places, and buy one, which is insane. So what does the nonviolent Jesus want us to do? Every step we can make to end violence is helpful. And if you believe in the God of peace, we just do our part down here, and God can use it to help bring about the change we all want. So there's many places, because I'm so involved in every state in the country, full time. I've been at this. I know everybody, it feels like. Many people are working on gun buybacks and actual gun disarmament projects. Like literally, you turn in your guns, and this group will hammer them while you're there into. A friend of mine last week showed me a rosary made out of wood. The beads were from gun handles that were turned in, George. Isn't that powerful? You see what, and I'm going to try to get it sent to Pope Francis. Well, all of that helps because we all have to begin a whole process of discernment, getting rid of the guns, teaching people nonviolence, turning in guns without any being legal problems, and also, but more fundamentally, spiritually, learning how to be nonviolent like Jesus. So I love that the Archdiocese is doing that, and that's one of a million things we all need to be working at.
We have about 30 seconds left. How can people get a copy of your book?
Oh, thank you. Well, my new book, The God of Peace, is available. All my books are available on Amazon, but it's published by Orbis Books, and they can get it there, along with a lot of my books. You can read about my writings and my books at www.johndeere.org. It's spelt funny. It's DEAR, johndeere.org. Or my Zoom project, which has more about my books and free podcasts, which is beatitudecenter.org. That's beatitudecenter.org. Thanks for having me, George.
Great. Thank you so much for being here, Brother John. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
For Catholic Review Radio, I'm George Matusek. Thanks for listening.
Living nonviolent lives by learning to lean into Jesus. That is Catholic Review Radio. If you want more of that conversation or ones you might have missed, easy to find at EWTN.com/podcast or subscribe wherever you like to stream. Also, remember, for more shows like this, make sure you check out EWTN Extra so that not only do you have all the great programming from EWTN, but you have extra to take with you, plus Podcast Central. There is a great way for us to grow in our faith this week. I'm Ace McKay. Thanks for spending time with me this week. I'll see you again as we gather our thoughts and have the best week ever by letting God define who we are. I'll see you again with Catholics Coast to Coast.